Okay, so let's try and unpack this. We've been looking at this source material, and it details a really intense, very organized spiritual framework. It actually calls itself the Monad-Catalyst system.
Mhm.
And the core claim seems to be that it can accelerate transformation. But interestingly, not by, piling on more spiritual ideas, but by structurally reorganizing how an individual experiences reality.
Right. And what makes this particular deep dive so interesting, I think, is the foundation it claims. It's not drawing from, say, modern psychology or even, traditional Eastern thought primarily.
No, it's very specific.
Very specific. The system explicitly grounds its whole method, its practices, its claims about why it works squarely in the philosophy of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. We're talking 17th century metaphysics here, specifically his concept of the monadology.
Yeah, likeness. That's
Yeah.
that's the hook,
Yeah.
isn't it? So our mission today really is to dig into how this spiritual technology, as they call it, tries to integrate that very dense metaphysics, the nature of being itself, essentially, and use it to build what the sources are calling an architecture of sovereignty.
That's the term they use. An architecture of sovereignty.
We need to see how the individual, defined in these Leibnizian terms, is somehow positioned as the author of their own reality.
And the starting point for initiates in this system, the very first concept they present, is a fundamental reframing of chaos. It's the idea that what we perceive as confusion, as disorder. It's actually, and this is their phrase, only the misrecognition of a pattern already whole.
Okay, wait, let me get this straight. So if I'm looking at my life and maybe things feel chaotic, money worries, relationship issues, whatever, the Monad-Catalyst system, the MCS, is saying that chaos isn't fundamentally real. It's just a perfect pattern that I'm failing to recognize.
That's precisely the claim. It leans heavily on Leibniz's own conviction, which you find in his Principles of Nature and Grace. Leibniz believed God's perfection naturally results in this inherent harmony of all created things.
The mini.
Yeah. So in this view, every single substance, every individual thing follows its own unique internal laws.
Yeah.
But, and this is the crucial part, through what Leibniz called pre-established harmony, it simultaneously agrees with the others. Everything is already perfectly synchronized, even if that synchronization is completely hidden from our everyday perception.
Wow. Okay, that completely shifts the goalposts for personal transformation, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It moves the whole effort away from this frantic struggle to fix things or build something better externally.
Right, the striving.
And turns it into a kind of disciplined effort to correctly perceive, to uncover the fixed, perfect pattern that, according to this, already is my life.
It does. The system presents itself as an entry point, a threshold into recognizing that harmony. It's explicitly designed not to manufacture coherence because, metaphysically speaking, the coherence is already guaranteed.
It's already there.
It's already there. The goal is just to uncover the single design. And that's where they say the inner scaffolding and the outer order are revealed as a single structure.
Yeah.
So transformation becomes an act of revelation, not this laborious construction project.
That transition, shifting from fighting fate to just recognizing the pattern, that feels profound. But okay, to really grasp how the system claims to work, we have to dive into the philosophical anchor for all of this, the monad.
We absolutely have to. The entire effectiveness, the whole logic of the monad-catalyst system really hinges on accepting Leibniz's definition of the individual as a monad.
Right.
It pulls straight from his discourse on metaphysics. The assertion is that each individual, you, me, everyone, is already structured as a complete singular order. That's the inherent source of self-sufficiency in this model.
And Leibniz described every substance, every monad as being like an entire world, didn't he?
Yes, exactly. And crucially, he also said it's a mirror of God, or indeed of the whole world, which it portrays, each one in its own fashion. Think about that. It means you are, in essence, a complete self-contained universe.
Wow.
Reflecting the entire cosmos, but always from your own unique, inherent, structured point of view. So the work within the MCS, therefore, can't be about importing new things from outside, new skills, new luck.
Yeah.
It can only be about refining the quality and the clarity of the reflection that's already guaranteed structurally to be perfect.
Okay, that implication is staggering. If I'm already a complete universe, then the only real variable is the fidelity of my internal state. How clearly am I mirroring? And this coherence, this self-sufficiency, it's explained by probably the most famous and maybe strangest rule from the monadology.
Yes, the famous windowless architecture.
Windowless.
Leibniz states it very clearly. Monads have no windows through which anything could come in or go out. This is the absolute philosophical bedrock that justifies the MCS's intense internal focus.
The windowless monad. It's such a powerful image in philosophy. But let's pause on that for a second. What does that really mean for human experience? If I am truly windowless, does that mean neither substance, like material things, nor external accidents? A sudden job loss, winning the lottery, meeting someone amazing. None of that can actually penetrate or enter my core being.
That is the critical point the system leverages. The monad is sealed, hermetically sealed, you might say.
Okay.
By definition, the individual is a self-contained complete order, completely impenetrable by any external force. Now, if you accept that premise, the entire causal chain of your life flips on its head.
Wait, so if that job loss or that lucky rip, it cannot enter or fundamentally change my internal monad, then the only way I can experience those external events is if they are just the necessary projected reflection of an internal pattern I already hold. So I'm not being acted upon by the world.
No.
I am projecting what's already contained within me, according to my internal program.
That is the exact connection the monad-catalyst system insists upon, mandates even. This principle dictates why your inner life must be the primary field of creation. The external event, the accident, it simply cannot penetrate the monad. It can only ever reflect what is already composed within, unfolding according to the monad's own internal law.
So if my external life feels chaotic,
Then, according to this model, it's because your windowless monad is necessarily internally generating that precise reflection of chaos. The chaos isn't out there invading, it's in here projecting.
okay. So the MCS, by grounding itself in this windowless nature, it effectively shifts the whole conversation. It moves away from battling external circumstances, which it says is impossible anyway, and puts all the focus squarely onto mastering the self, the internal state. But here's the challenge then. If I'm this sealed off, complete entity, how does any change happen? If nothing new can come in, where does the impulse for transformation even come from? It needs some kind of internal engine, right?
It does, and Leibniz provides that too. That internal engine, the force that drives change from within the sealed structure, is what he called appetition.
Appetition, okay.
He detailed it in the monadology. Appetition is this ceaseless internal driving force. He defined it as the action of the internal principle which brings about the change or the passing from one perception to another. It's like this constant, subtle internal inclination pushing towards the next pre-programmed state.
So it's like an internal momentum, a kind of continuous pressure for the monad to just unfold its own sequence of experiences and states, like an inherent urge for self-realization built right into the fabric of being.
Exactly, an unavoidable urge. And crucially, Leibniz specifies that this desire, this appetition, always attains a portion of it and reaches new perceptions. This isn't just passive wishing, it's an active, successful movement toward its own future state. And that specific quote is what provides the structural justification for the MCS's emphasis on small, consistent efforts.
Oh, okay, I see the link now. The monad-catalyst system isn't demanding some huge, impossible, instantaneous spiritual breakthrough because the monad itself is built on continuous, gradual movement, appetition.
Right.
So it demands that disciplined daily constancy, those minutes each day they talk about, because those small acts are essentially the harnessing and directing of appetition. Each minor effort consistently applied secures its portion of the next state, ensuring the inner order is incrementally but completely remade over time.
It essentially turns consistency into a metaphysical lever. The continuous application of a new internal pattern, say through a specific daily meditation or a focused intention, guides that innate force of appetition toward manifesting that specific pattern.
Okay, moving from the deep metaphysics for a moment, let's talk about the practical side, the spiritual technology itself. The monad-catalyst system is explicitly marketed as a method for summoning of new realities. How exactly does it frame this summoning process?
Well, it frames it almost like an engineering solution to a metaphysical reality. If the monad is indeed this complete self-generating structure, then the only thing you theoretically need is a precision system, the catalyst, to direct that self-generation effectively.
Right.
So it promises to alter the ground of life itself so that, again, in their words, hidden potential is drawn from latency and brought into visible truth.
But the MCS makes this really bold claim about efficiency. It says the work is meant to spare the seeker years of study and releases them from the exhaustion of striving for awakening. It sounds like a radical shortcut. If we're talking about genuine sovereignty, mastery, how can that possibly be achieved efficiently? Doesn't mastery take time and, striving?
The system argues that striving, at least in the sense of battling external forces, is fundamentally unnecessary. precisely because of the pre-established harmony and the windowless nature of the monad.
Ah, okay.
You don't need to push against the world. You just need the right code, the system itself, to unlock the internal software that already guarantees transformation when correctly operated. The exhaustion of striving, in their view, comes entirely from trying to push against the external reflection, which is futile.
Because it's just a reflection.
Exactly. The MCS directs all effort internally, where, because the monad is windowless, that effort is claimed to be essentially 100% efficient. No energy is wasted pushing against an impenetrable barrier.
That makes their cost requirement really interesting then. The system demands this transformation not through, spectacular exertion or grand gesture.
No fasting on mountains, no.
Right, but through loyal constancy, steady devotion, and integrity in practice. The cost is consistent internal alignment, requiring, as they say, only minutes each day.
It's basically a commitment to continuous, directed appetition. And the system emphasizes integrity so strongly because any internal dissonance, any mismatch between your stated intention and your actual emotional or mental state will, by the monad's inherent law, be reflected perfectly and inevitably.
So you have to be internally honest for it to work.
The MCS fundamentally cannot function, according to its own logic, if the monad isn't internally truthful or coherent in its application of the practice.
And the return on this investment of constancy and integrity, it's described in almost, magical terms sometimes. Circumstances reconfigure without calculation. Evidence of change resists dismissal. The work compounds, apparently, until the fabric of existence itself yields.
Yeah, and this is where the concept of the catalyst really comes in. Those initial practices, they introduce maybe it's a specific prayer, a particular kind of meditation, or consciously creating a witness state. These aren't just seen as generic spiritual tools. They're framed as specific metaphysical keys. They're designed to establish a precise resonance that directs the otherwise diffused natural energy of appetition. The system believes these small, consistent acts actively direct unseen forces into form and coherence.
Okay, so let me see if I'm following this. The MCS isn't claiming to provide new energy or power.
No.
It's claiming to provide highly focused, precise direction for the energy that's already inherent within the monad, the appetition. It uses these simple, consistent acts to impress a specific, refined pattern into the windowless monad.
Yes.
And then it just lets the immutable law of appetition take over and automatically unfold that newly impressed pattern into visible external reality.
That's exactly the model. And the sources are very careful to stress the observable consequences. They insist the transformation is tangible and it's dual-sided. You see inward changes, things like heightened clarity and expanded capacity to perceive patterns.
Yeah.
And these are immediately matched, they claim, by corresponding outward shifts. Tangible things like relationships reorganizing themselves, obstacles that seemed insurmountable suddenly dissolving, opportunities surfacing with uncanny precision.
And this experience presumably leads the initiate to the crucial realization that the mind isn't just passively mirroring circumstances reflecting the chaos out there.
Exactly.
It reveals itself as the first field of creation. The inner architecture, the structure and state of the monad actually precedes and determines the outer reality.
And that realization, that felt sense of inner architecture dictating outer reality, is positioned as the genuine beginning of sovereignty within the system. Once you truly grasp, they say, that the outward event is merely the necessary, guaranteed reflection of your inward state, the only logical response is to take complete, radical responsibility for that inner state.
Okay, let's deepen that. This realization seems like a major turning point. The next step in this transformation journey, according to the sources, involves dissolving the illusion that life is fundamentally fractured. The feeling that my inner thoughts are somehow separate from the external events I bump into.
Right, the illusion of separation.
Yeah. And the discovery the MCS works to enforce is one of absolute symmetry.
Yes, symmetry is a huge concept for them. The source material defines it as this profound, unbreakable alignment. What one holds internally reverberates outward, and what is encountered outwardly reflects the inner state. This isn't just a nice idea. It's presented as the operational law of reality.
So my moods don't just affect my relationships.
No, they structurally shape them.
And my core beliefs or convictions don't just inform the opportunities I see.
They literally scaffold them into existence. The claim is zero separation. Zero lag time, essentially, between the mental and the material once you understand the connection.
And we have to keep looping back to the monadology here, don't we? To give this seemingly radical idea its intellectual grounding. The system constantly reemphasizes that because the monad is windowless.
Yes, section 7.
This apparent exchange between inner and outer is never a transfer of energy or influence. The external event didn't cause the internal feeling. It was simply the necessary pre-harmonized reflection of a pre-existing internal composition.
That windowless nature is the critical philosophical shield, if you like, for the MCS. The system absolutely insists nothing foreign penetrates the inner life. The events playing out in your life are not alien intrusions happening to you. They are the necessary output, the printout of what has already been composed within your monad's unique architecture.
Which turns every single circumstance
Into an immediate, incontrovertible tool for self-diagnosis. What am I holding internally that necessitated this reflection?
Okay, this is where the tone really shifts, doesn't it?
Mhm.
From interesting philosophy to something with quite serious ethical weight for anyone participating. This level of recognition, it carries what the sources call the gravity of responsibility.
Immense responsibility.
Once your perception shifts and you realize you are the primary engine generating your experience, you immediately have to recognize your role as the author, not just the passive recipient of events.
And that, right there, is defined as the definitive first step into sovereignty within the MCS framework. The moment you perceive that your consciousness actively impresses itself upon the field of life, you simultaneously impose upon yourself both, well, burden and freedom, as they put it.
The burden beam.
The burden is accepting full participation, full authorship of any negative condition you might be experiencing. You can't blame the outside anymore.
Right.
But the freedom is knowing that because of this direct link, reshaping the self necessarily means reshaping those conditions with what they claim is absolute certainty. The internal adjustments must move outward with metaphysical force.
Okay, so beyond this static idea of symmetry intermatches, out of the MCS, then introduces the concept of rhythm. It starts talking about phenomena not as chaotic intrusions, but as movements of oscillation.
Yes, it reframes things like bad luck or unexpected setbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Disorder isn't seen as true randomness anymore, but rather as dissonance or a kind of misalignment within a broader field of resonance.
So it's like shifting from seeing life as a series of disconnected random accidents
To viewing it more like a continuous wave, a sine wave, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. And mastery, then, isn't found in trying to stop the wave or flatten it.
Which is impossible anyway.
Right. But in attunement.
Learning to ride the waves.
Precisely. Finding attunement leads to what they call the conservation of energy. Energy that was previously wasted fighting against the inevitable up and down rhythm of existence can now be conserved and redirected. Instead of struggling against the current, you learn to move with it with a kind of measured composure. And this emphasis on rhythm, on continuity, it's not just a nice metaphor. It's, again, directly pulled from Leibniz's framework, isn't it? The MCS points to a specific section of the monadology to back this up.
It does. It connects directly to Leibniz's concept of continuity,
Yeah.
which you find clearly stated in section 22. He writes, every present state of a simple substance is a natural consequence of its preceding state, in such a way that its present is pregnant with its future.
Pregnant with its future. That is such an evocative phrase. It means the current moment isn't isolated. It literally contains the seed, the blueprint, the necessary law of whatever comes next.
Exactly. So for the MCS, stabilizing your internal rhythm isn't some arbitrary spiritual exercise. It's about recognizing and aligning your personal practice with an inevitability that's already built into the structure of being itself. Rhythm becomes law.
And the initiate
Learns to embrace both ascent and decline, the ups and the downs, as essential parts of the cycle, realizing that resisting the natural current of existence is the primary way we dissipate our energy. Once that energy is conserved, it dramatically amplifies the effectiveness of any intentional actions taken within the system.
So as the path goes on through mastering this symmetry and stabilizing this rhythm, sovereignty starts to really reveal itself. But importantly, not as brute force, not as ego-driven will.
No, not at all.
But as a kind of subtle mastery of the internal laws of reality that govern how the monad unfolds itself.
That's right. The MCS dictates that perception and intention are not passive, idle processes happening in your head. They are fundamentally formative. They're generative. Attention and imagination are explicitly trained and used as actual instruments that sculpt fate.
Sculpt fate. Wow.
The initiate is taught that their words carry weight. They stabilize reality, and that imagination, when properly directed and sustained, advances into embodiment as lived and undeniable reality.
Okay, this level of claimed creative power, It feels like it needs some serious structural support. It can't just be wishful thinking. And the sources make it clear that this idea of sovereignty is locked into place by Leibniz's two great principles. This is where the metaphysics really comes in to enforce the spiritual technology.
Absolutely. This provides the intellectual gravity. You look at the monadology sections 31 and 32. Leibniz lays out his two foundational principles of reasoning. First, there's the principle's contradiction, basically. What is logically false cannot exist.
Okay, standard logic.
Standard logic. But the second one is the powerhouse here, the principle of sufficient reason. Leibniz states that no fact can be real or existing and no statement true unless there be a sufficient reason why it should be so and not otherwise.
Let's break that down. Sufficient reason. It means everything that exists for a reason. Nothing is arbitrary. The world is fundamentally coherent and necessary.
That's the core of it. The universe is perfectly rational. So, applying that to the MCS, if you are deliberately setting a specific vision or intention within your monad, that intention cannot just float there arbitrarily. Because the universe demands coherence, it requires a sufficient reason for that intention to eventually manifest in concrete form.
So the act of holding the clear, consistent intention becomes the sufficient reason.
That is precisely the application the system teaches. The vision, the intention, whatever is deliberately and coherently set within the monad, finds its reason, and by that reason enters into form. Sovereignty, then, is defined as living with this constant awareness, this reverence, knowing that every utterance, every choice, every sustained mental image is known to reverberate beyond its moment. Why? Because reality is structurally engineered to find and manifest the sufficient reason. It's compelled to make the cause manifest as effect.
Okay. This philosophical enforcement makes the MCS sound incredibly demanding. But it also raises a question. If the monad operates according to these immutable laws, symmetry, rhythm, sufficient reason, how does the system introduce the catalyst part? How can you possibly change an outcome that seems metaphysically inevitable?
Right, that's the core of their unique methodology, isn't it? Where does the catalyst actually catalyze anything? The MCS fully acknowledges that the architecture of existence is governed by these immutable laws. But then, crucially, it proposes to insert keys.
Keys. What are these keys in practice? Like specific techniques?
Exactly. Subtle interventions, specific protocols, highly precise practices. They're designed essentially to interrupt the habitual, unconscious way we usually enact those immutable laws within ourselves.
Okay.
Think of them like tuned apertures, as the source puts it. They allow selective passage or maybe a slight redirection away from the expected curve of cause and effect. So instead of the monad continuing to reflect the same old chaotic internal pattern it's been running for decades, the key, the catalyst practice, forces it, gently but persistently, to run a new specified coherent pattern instead.
That still feels a bit like a paradox, though. You're accepting the absolute immutability of the law, yet you're proposing to intervene in the seemingly inevitable outcome of that law. How does the MCS reconcile that tension?
It resolves it, essentially, by focusing on the input, not the fundamental laws themselves. The system holds that mastery arises from this combination, a profound, spontaneous surrender of the habitual self.
Letting go of the old patterns.
Exactly. Letting go of the old internal programming. And coupling that surrender with the steady cultivation of disciplined practice, the new programming, it reframes inevitability. It's not a prison, it's an opportunity. You surrender the old chaotic pattern so that the new disciplined pattern can be deeply impressed upon the monad.
And then the law takes over?
Then the law is. Sufficient reason, appetition, harmony enforces the new pattern with the exact same metaphysical necessity and force it used to enforce the old one.
So the ultimate craft here isn't about breaking the law because that's deemed metaphysically impossible.
Impossible.
But about redirecting its immense force. Participants are taught to engage with these fundamental laws not as fixed, unchangeable stone, but as a pliable structural energy. They learn to redirect the law of cause, turning what felt like rigid inevitability into a point of creative leverage or pliability.
And the language the system uses to describe this redirection is really specific and seems central to their techniques. They actually teach that correspondence turns into lever when its chain is reset, or rhythm becomes current when its pulse is broken and retuned. Symmetry becomes portal when its balance shifts.
Wow, so the immutable laws of the universe become the very tools for transformation and ascent.
That's the claim. And it's this detailed practical application of the monadology that gives the catalyst system the theoretical weight it needs to claim genuine predictable efficacy. It moves it beyond just positive thinking.
Okay, we've really covered the architectural framework now. We can see how the deep reliance on Leibniz provides this theoretical justification for why consistent inner work must, logically, yield outer results. It aims to move the whole process out of the realm of mere hope or speculation and into the realm of metaphysical necessity.
And it's probably worth briefly touching on the formal structure for actually entering the system, because the sources indicate the MCS is highly controlled. Access isn't just open, it's strictly contingent upon documented consent and a serious acceptance of ethical responsibility.
Which makes sense given the power claims.
Exactly. It seems necessitated by the implications of things like the principle of sufficient reason. If you're genuinely learning to sculpt fate, as they say, the system needs to ensure the intent behind that sculpting is responsible.
And the path itself, it proceeds through quite a rigorous preparation and orientation phase first.
Yes, apparently designed specifically to train those inner instruments of the monad: attention, imagination, coherence. And only then does it move into what they call the 9 gates and foundational instruction,
The 9 gates.
which sound like conceptual lectures, really. Masterclasses in applied monadology designed to ensure the initiate fully understands the theoretical depth before they gain access to the proprietary operational techniques, the keys we talked about.
So it's a serious undertaking.
Very much so. The initiation is described as being dramatic in its consequences, but also absolute in its insistence that the participant accept full responsibility as author and steward of the altered field. It demands real intellectual and ethical seriousness, precisely because the stakes are framed as being structured by metaphysical necessity.
This has been a really complex, fascinating deep dive. We've seen this merger of 17th century philosophical idealism with what claims to be a modern spiritual technology. And it's clear the monadology isn't just some quaint philosophical backdrop.
No, it's presented as the actual operating manual.
The operating manual for the Monad-Catalyst system.
And perhaps, to bring it all together,
Mhm.
if we connect this entire process back to the biggest picture perspective from Leibniz, we return to his fundamental conviction. His belief that God chose the laws of motion, the laws of nature, in the most perfect and harmonious way possible, leading, famously, to the best of all possible worlds, where the greatest variety is joined to the greatest order.
Right. The best of all possible worlds.
So the really profound implications stemming from the monad-catalyst system, when you view it through that lens, is that this perfect, ordered law of the universe isn't meant to be a rigid chain holding us in passive obedience.
You're not prison.
It's not a prison. It's presented as a pliable, coherent medium, specifically designed for sophisticated conscious interaction. It reframes universal inevitability not as a limitation, but as the very foundation for precise creative interference.
Which leaves a really challenging thought for the listener, doesn't it?
It does. The central question this system seems to pose to you, the learner, is this. If existence itself is this perfect, ordered pattern, governed by necessity and synchronized by harmony, then what responsibility do you take? What responsibility do you take in learning how to consciously bend the law of a perfect order into the ladder of creation? That seems to be the ultimate challenging consequence of embracing the monad-catalyst system and its architecture of sovereignty.